Trump showing off to the dictator of Azerbaijan the section of the House dedicated to showing off Trump hats.
You know, you're not allowed
The White House.
to run a bid. So, because everyone, I'm 28 points higher than anyone. Everybody wants me to run, but
including
us. You know, it's funny. So this drives me crazy. Look, 4 more years. I go 4 more years. So it's sort of cool. Fellas, come on, grab what you want. That's okay.
Hearing number one, having a Trump hat section of the White House, interesting. Him saying that people can take what they want, so it's kind of like a grab bag for visitors, also interesting. You visit the historic White House. What did you get? Oh, I got this hat with the president's name on it. Okay. Well, the most interesting part of this to me is that little dry laugh that the president of Azerbaijan gives Trump when he points at the hats and talks about them. This dry, the type of laugh that you push out of your neck.
Because everyone, I'm 28 points higher than anyone. Everybody wants me to run, but
including us.
You know, it's funny. So this drives me crazy. Look, 4 more years. I go 4 more years.
That's what I hear. It sounds more like a horse whining, letting off a whinny, than it does a laugh. But you know, A for effort. A for effort. You know what? We were just talking about Armenia and Azerbaijan. We can't talk about this briefly. So one of the recent victories that the Trump team has been touting is a peace deal between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Now, some of you might be confused as to why they would need a peace deal, as they are not. There hasn't been any headlines recently about Armenia invading Azerbaijan or Azerbaijan invading Armenia. But not too long ago, Azerbaijan invaded Armenian-controlled Nagorno-Karabakh, saying that this was, controlled by Azerbaijan at one point, and that during the fighting, it was after the collapse of the Soviet Union, Armenia took it over. A lot of the Azerbaijani parts of it had left, and that most international bodies, most international organizations, most maps mark it as Azerbaijani territory. We want it back. They then took it back violently, and about 100,000 Armenians that lived in Nagorno-Karabakh fled. This is part of a long-standing ethnic conflict between the two nations, and it is something that has led to many people losing their lives and losing their homes. But it did not stop there. It was already very terrible for these over 100,000 people to flee their homes. But there was also a fear that Azerbaijan could invade further, as their military power and economic power have really grown lopsidedly in comparison to Armenia, and that they were going to launch another invasion in order to connect a Azerbaijani enclave that is behind Armenian territory to Azerbaijan by invading Armenia and just creating a military corridor for them, like just taking Armenian territory. And they could then take substantially, definitely if they already go through the motion of going to war, maybe even more than what is necessary for a corridor, and just take a large swath of the country, further displacing even more Armenians, which is already a massive issue for Armenia, of the amount of displaced people that have come and set up shop in other places of the country, and how big of a nationalist issue it is for many Armenians. And so where exactly this was going was up in the air, because originally it was supposed to be the Russians that kept this all in line, but then the Russians invaded Ukraine, and their interest in really getting involved in this completely collapsed. They didn't seem willing to dedicate troops to deal with the issue. They didn't seem really willing to face down the Azerbaijanis, either because they didn't want to face down the Turks. They didn't have the resources to do it. They didn't see it really within their interest to risk substantial confrontation or military resources right now, when if the Azerbaijanis called their bluff, that would mean they had to move in tanks, they would have to move in planes, they would have to move in resources. And with their agents already being fired upon in Armenia, it didn't seem like the Azerbaijanis were that cooperative when it comes to the backing down category. And so Russia felt that because of the standing conflict, because Armenia didn't really have many other places to go, that they could just kind of take a back step there. But now with Russia taking a back step, America took a forward step, and Armenia took a forward step towards the United States, and Azerbaijan has taken, in many instances, kind of like forward steps, kind of like collaborative steps with the United States, but not just the United States, but with Europe as well. Much of Russia's energy export loss has been Azerbaijan's energy export gain, with them replacing a decent amount of that export, with there actually being a recent scandal due to the quality of some of that export. Now, the human rights record of the Azerbaijani government is extremely lacking, but Azerbaijan is not currently invading Europe. Azerbaijan is not currently invading Ukraine. And a war between Armenia and Azerbaijan is substantially less of a risk for European stability than the invasion of Ukraine. And that war isn't really hot right now, so to speak. There wasn't like a ton of clashes on the border as of this moment. So right now, Azerbaijan seems pretty comfortable selling these energy products to the West. Azerbaijan has been able to get pretty cozy up with Donald Trump, who is not willing really at all to critique the Azerbaijani government's human rights record. And the Europeans seem willing to look past it due to the energy import and the situation they faced with the Russians. And so it seemed that the dominoes were put in place. They then sat down with Trump as a mediator, and for a large part, they've been able to come to some agreements about a corridor for Azerbaijan to be able to access the enclave to the south. They've been able to come to an agreement about a stop to the hostilities, a stop to the violence. This will mean, of course, that Armenia will likely have to relinquish any territorial claims to Nagorno-Karabakh, which is where the Azerbaijani, the Azerbaijanis took over. But at the end of the day, there has to be constitutional changes, according to the Azerbaijanis, that have to be approved and pushed through officially before they will completely recognize this deal. So it doesn't mean that this deal is 100% lock solid and to go. But there has been announcements from Trump, and there have been announcements from the other parties that, they're going through with this deal. But the Azerbaijanis have been clear that until those constitutional changes are made, in their eyes, the deal has yet to be brought to fruition. The deal has yet to be truly signed and notarized, so to speak. So is this a potentially good deal where the United States was able to sweep in as a mediator during this moment where the geopolitical tensions are shifting, where Russia has lost influence in the Caucasus? Maybe. Maybe it is. But there's also the possibility of the war kicking off again in a few months if they're not able to get an official settlement. Until the fat lady sings, until, everything is in place and we see it working and there's not clashes on the border, I'm going to suspend my belief because the record between Azerbaijan and Armenia and the record of the Azerbaijani leader when it comes to pushing ethnic conflict is not exquisite. But I will say, this is something that has the Russians very concerned. And I think it makes sense that the Russians are concerned, at least from where they are politically right now, from where they are geopolitically right now. Because this deal, as part of it, the Russians are to not be in Armenia or Azerbaijan. They're not supposed to be there. It will be the United States who might actually have security forces there in the corridor in the south of the country. And they're also getting some pretty big mineral deals. But nowhere in this deal is there a place for the Russians. Now, the Russians said that they like the deal. They like that there's peace. But then they also said that they don't like, quote unquote, foreign meddling. Foreign meddling was what they said. Now, I think that really means is we don't like you getting in the Caucasus and putting your soldiers there or getting us out of there, considering that we consider that our backyard. It's the same philosophy by which Mearsheimer will critique American and European involvement in Eastern Europe, considering its proximity to the Russians. Either way, though, Russian propaganda channels are not too happy Sputnik, actually, which is, of course, the Russian propaganda outlet, they claimed that the U.S. deal between Batkau or Yerevan, Batkau being Batkau being the Azerbaijani capital and Yerevan being the Armenian capital, that this is a step towards peace, is how the media talking about it, and these capitals talking about it. But actually, this is threatening Russia's interests in the North-South corridor, to their interests in Iran, and to their interests in the Middle East. And this is actually a American operation to jeopardize Russian access to Iran and India. With, and I quote, American influence in the region, a crisis, even a military one, could erupt at any moment, likely hinting at possible new Russian operations. Despite Russia's, quote, long-standing diplomatic efforts, Armenia and Azerbaijan have apparently chosen the West. I wonder why the Armenians might be a little miffed about how the Russians have treated them, about their record of being respected and, loyalty. And I wonder why the Azerbaijanis, who just had their civilian plane shot down by the Russians, who have a pretty bad record of shooting down civilian planes, even though, of course, the United States has never had a perfect record on that either. Yeah, of course, the Iranians know that. But they shot down, and the Iranians have done it too with the Ukrainians. They shoot down an Azerbaijani plane. They disrespect the Azerbaijanis. The Azerbaijanis made their disrespect not known, and then the West offer them piles and piles and piles of energy export profit. And the president of the United States couldn't care less about your human rights record. Azerbaijan seems like is in a good position right now, tilting towards the West. And you were the ones who showed disloyalty towards Armenia. And I mean, the Armenians were in a tough position. And I understand where the Russian words and where the Russians were and why they couldn't send it. But this is why you don't start massive security crises that tie you to one war where now you can't really respond with gravity to other security crises in your purview. This is why they couldn't do much to help Bashar al-Assad. And this is why they couldn't do much, even though I don't think they really wanted to support Armenia when Azerbaijan invaded Nagorno-Karabakh. Okay. Interesting stuff. We've missed so much news that we're trying to catch up on. Oh, God. Do I really have this queued up? I do have this queued up. Oh, Lord.